guys, this video is for our kindergarten through 4th grade team. Everybody's doing the same thing this week. This is for June, week 4, and all month long we're learning the life app of confidence, learning to see yourself the way that God sees you. And then our memory verse, we are doing the NIRV verse, which is not on there, but I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I think ours says, I will see God's goodness while I'm still alive. And this week our story is about Elijah and the prophets of Baal, and our bottom line is God can do the impossible. So to kind of summarize this week, it says we finish up the month in 1 Kings chapter 18. Elijah showed confidence that God could do the impossible. When Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal, he believed that God would come through for him and send fire from heaven. So much so that he doubled down on the challenge. God showed up and proved his power over the impossible. So our bottom line, God can do the impossible. This simple bottom line is packed with some amazing truth. God has the power to do anything. And when we believe that, it can change everything. And we hope that kids discover how they can live with confidence, knowing this truth about God. So jumping into our leader guide, as always, just take a minute to pray for your kiddos as they're coming in your room or beforehand. Just praying that God will give them the confidence to know that he can do anything and who he is. And then as kiddos walk in, make sure you know their names. Ask them how their summer's going. And then there's going to be a beanbag on your cart. I'll show you the beanbag like you don't know what a beanbag looks like. There'll be a beanbag on your cart, and you can pass the beanbag around and have kids say when they're holding the beanbag, they can tell the group about the coolest or craziest thing they've ever seen or done themselves. And you can keep passing the beanbag around and asking kids to share crazy cool stories. Then when service starts at 9 and 11, we've got a beach ball for every group. And what you're going to do is you're going to stand in a big circle and you're going to unpack the word impossible, explaining that if something is impossible, it can't happen. So these are our kindergarten through 1st grade questions on this first page. You're going to ask, is it possible or impossible? And then we've got all these things. And so what you're going to do is you're going to toss the ball to a kid and you're going to say, Trip, is it possible or impossible for an elephant to fit in a shoebox? And when they catch the ball, they're going to either say possible or impossible and then toss the ball back to you. And if a kid says something's possible that you think is impossible, ask them to explain because maybe they have a reason why. And then for our 2nd through 4th graders, what you're going to do is you're going to toss the beach ball and ask them the situation. On the Japanese island of Yakushima, Mackay monkeys are known to ride deer for transportation. Do you think that's possible or impossible? And, these are a little bit more silly. The kids might not know them a little bit harder. And so then you're just going to close it down by saying, great job. Some of these things were possible, impossible. We're going to go in large group today where we're going to hear about somebody that can always do the impossible. And then you will head to large group to hear about the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal. When you return, a few options that you can do with your small group. The first one is a little craft. It's our memory verse activity, so you're going to practice the memory verse. Here is something I am sure of. I will see the Lord's goodness while I am still alive. And what you're going to do is the kids will have some water and a paintbrush. And they're going to get their altar wet because that's what Elijah did in the story. So they're just going to put some water on the altar. And then they've got these little pieces of tissue paper that are the color of fire. And all they're going to do is they're going to stick these on because even after Elijah they might have to put a little bit more water on a little bit at a time. I wanted to do this on video to see how it would work. Even after Elijah got the altar wet, what happened? It was impossible for a fire to start based off how wet the altar was. But our God, he can do the impossible. And so he was still able to make a fire even though the altar was completely soaking wet. And so that's what you want to talk to the kids about as they are making their fires. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys, they only really need a few pieces of this tissue paper. And they're just getting it a little wet to make their fire because God can do the impossible. So it says Psalm 27:13 tells us we can be confident that we'll see God's goodness. Well, how did Elijah and the Israelites see God's goodness? They saw God do the impossible. They saw God send fire and rain. God is good and God can do the impossible. And we may never see God do the impossible, but we can see proof of his goodness and his power when we see the world that he made. Just by speaking, he made the sun and the moon and the stars and the plants and the trees and animals, and best of all, he made us. So can God do the impossible? Yes, God can do the impossible. Then the next activity that you can do, there are 12 stones that Elijah used to make the altar, and you're going to put them in a big circle around your room. And then inside, you're going to put these cards that have writing on them face down. And on the wall or the floor or the table around, you're going to lay these picture cards face up. And what you're going to do is you're going to play some music, and you're going to have kids kind of do a cakewalk around the numbers. Tell them not to step on the numbers, just by the numbers. And then when the music stops, they're going to freeze on a number, and you'll call out that number. So number 7, whoever's on number 7 is going to go to the middle and flip one of these over, and either they can read it or you can read it, depending on the age. God can provide food for a family who needs it. And then they're going to find the picture that goes along with that impossible statement. So the pictures, you can scatter them around the room if you want. You can hang them on the walls scattered around the room, just kind of help kids seek and find those pictures. So this might be more for our younger kids, or for our older kids. I would maybe save this for if you have time left over at the end. I would say a great activity, especially for our older kids, but really for any of them, would be this little Bible summary story. So what you're going to do is you are going to show the kids in the Adventure Bible, this is the story of Elijah, so you can read it, showing them the pictures. Here's King Ahab. Is that King? Yeah, King Ahab. And there's Elijah talking to the people, and there's the prophet of Baal, and there's all of his people begging, send fire, send fire, send fire. And they're hurting themselves even. They're exhausted. And then Elijah comes and he builds his altar, and then he builds a ditch around it and fills it with water. And then he pours water all over his altar. And then he asks God to send fire. And so this is a great picture so the kids can see what an altar would look like. Asks God to send fire, and boom, fire comes and it sets the altar on fire. The prophet the Baal is destroyed, and then God sends rain. So that is just a great way to kind of review the story with the kids. And then what you're going to do is you're going to show them these Elijah cards, and you're going to model these following motions. So when they see Elijah, they are going to shout triumphantly, God can do the impossible. When they see Ahab, they're going to use both hands to make a crown over their head because he was the king. When they see the fire, they're going to wave their hands and arms like fire. And when they see rain, they're going to open up both hands, spreading out their fingers, and starting with their hands above their head, bring them down like falling rain over their head. And then you're going to read this story activity page, and you're going to pause at each keyword and show the card and have the kids do the motions. So this kind of goes over the story, and whenever you see the bolded words, you're going to hold up the card and see if the kids can do the motions. And then to close it down, you're just going to say, can God do the impossible? Yes, God can do the impossible. When the Israelites saw God send fire that burned up the sacrifice, the wood, and even the water, they saw God do the impossible, and they cried out, the Lord is God. There might be some things in your life that seem impossible, and God may do the impossible, or he might help you trust him no matter what. Just remember that God loves you, and he is with you, and he is always in control. Can God do the impossible? Yes, he can do the impossible. And then last thing, just closing down in prayer, you're going to lead kids in a responsive prayer. So they're going to say, God can do the impossible when you prompt them, okay? So then you're just going to pray, and you're going to say, when I lie in bed and feel afraid, I'll remember that God can do the impossible. And then you'll kind of keep going, and kids will respond with, God can do the impossible. So that is it. Lots of activities to choose from. Beanbag, ball at the beginning, then you can do the little craft for the fire. I think that's a great visual. You can match the impossible tasks that God can help do, and you can review the Bible story. That is it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for serving. You all are the most amazing leaders. I am so incredibly grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for serving and leading our kids so well every single week, and we'll see you on Sunday.